Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Ron's Personal Fitness. I'm Ron, and today we're going to talk about macronutrients in our Tuesday nutrition talk. Thursday, we'll start talking about exercise, and then next week, we'll start demonstrating different exercises and showing you how to set up your own routines. As we talk about macronutrients, we just have to keep in mind that, simply put, they are the three main categories of nutrients in our food. For example, proteins, carbs, and fats. Now, each gram of protein has 4 calories. Each gram of carbohydrates has 4 calories. Each gram of fat has 9 calories. And alcohol has 7 calories, almost as energy dense as fat is. And we know from previous talks that a calorie is a unit of heat. So each of these grams of our certain foods contain a certain amount of energy needed to heat up that cubic centimeter of water. So when we hear the term tracking macros, we hear that all the time. That's the latest thing. Ooh, I'm tracking my macros, whether it's through a tracking app like MyFitnessPal or our own app if you're one of my clients. All that means is that you are logging how many of each of those macronutrients that you're consuming per day. By the way, micronutrients are things like vitamins and minerals and metals, copper and zinc, and so, things in our diet that are kept track of in a micro environment. But the macro are the big things: protein, carbs, and fats. Okay. Um, so I'm tracking my macros. So I'm keeping, hopefully fastidious, track of my protein first. Always, always, always track your protein first. And our rule of thumb is for every pound of body weight, the average person needs about 3/4 of a pound, or 3/4 of a gram, I'm sorry, per pound of body weight. So if I'm 100 pounds, I need about 75 grams of protein per day. If I'm 200 pounds, I need at least 150 grams of protein per day. If you're training hard and heavy in the gym and you're participating in a resistance program where you're lifting 3, 4, 5 times a week, even maybe even 6 times a week, if you're really, really training for something, then your protein needs go up. And you may need as much as, we really don't want to go over a gram per pound of body weight. The reason for this is we found it to be fairly unnecessary to go 2 or 3 grams per pound of body weight. That's a lot of protein in your diet. But if you're taking in a gram, maybe a gram and a quarter if you're some elite athlete per pound of body weight. In other words, if you weigh 100 pounds, 100 grams, 200 pounds, 200 grams, and so on, then you are going to be fairly certain that you are meeting your protein needs as far as your diet is concerned. As we age, our protein needs go up because we don't break down and absorb the amino acids nearly as efficiently as we did when we were younger. So for the same amount of protein that you're consuming, you're getting less amino acids, or the building blocks of protein. So we have to take in more to get the same amount that we used to get with less. Okay? And it's just a factor of efficiency going down. All right? Again, when we're tracking things, you might be part of a diet that says, it's a 40-40-15 program. 40% or 45-40-15. Might be a 45% protein, 40% carbs, and 15% fats. And now that's calculations of the grams and the total calories that they provide. So we know that in a 45% diet, that a vast majority of your calories are going to come from protein. And if it's a 45-40, a little bit less in the form of carbs, and 15% what's left over in the form of fats. So as I've already indicated, we're going to start with our protein because we need that. We don't need carbs necessarily, and we certainly don't need fats. When we talk about essential fatty acids or essential proteins, well, those are things our body cannot make on its own. So we do have to bring those in through the diet. But as far as needing them to live, not necessarily, okay? Essential amino acids we can't produce on our own, so we have to get those through our diet. And the protein could be something that we need to live. So we do want to do that. But as far as carbs and fats, we can play with those a little bit more, is my point. So if we are consuming those grams of protein, then, for example, let's say my diet is 100 grams of protein. Well, right off the bat, I know that that is 400 calories because each gram contains 4 calories. And by the way, down in the description is a link to a Google document, which is your cheat sheet on how to calculate all of these things. So if you'll just go on down below here, click on that link, and you'll be able to print out your own copy of the nutrition cheat sheet that I've provided for you. But those 400 calories come off the top of your daily total. So let's say it's 2,000 calories. So my 400 calories away from the 2,000, I'm now at 1,600. Now, a good rule of thumb to start with before I have made minute adjustments to my diet and so on is to duplicate that with the number of carbs. And this is where we get our balanced type of programs, okay? So if I'm going to take that same amount of grams of carbohydrates, well, lo and behold, it's the same number of calories as my protein. So another 400 calories are going to come off, and I was at 16, so now I'm at 1,200 left, okay? Now, each gram of fat contains 9 calories, so I would take that 1,200, divide it by 9, and that would tell me how many grams of fat could remain in my diet, okay? Now, this would be kind of a high-fat diet, which is preferable for some people who are trying to put on muscle and things like that, okay? So if I'm down to a 45-40-15 program, then I know that 45% of my diet has to come from my protein. So I'm going to calculate my need and then do the rest of the tracking, and that'll tell me how many total calories and so on and so forth. Don't worry, the cheat sheet will help you. Okay? So other than it being rather time consuming, in other words, you've got to really calculate, first of all, your program, your total number of calories, and where each of those calories are coming from. Then you have to figure out what foods will fill in the blanks to get you that end result. So if I know I need so many grams of protein by the end of the day, and I'm going to eat 5 times, I take my total and divide by 5, and that will tell me how many to average for each meal. So if I'm a little short on this meal, I can make it up maybe with this meal, and so on and so forth. As long as by the end of the day, I have maintained my calories below a required number is going to give me a deficit. So I will lose weight. And anything over and above will hopefully go towards muscle if I'm exercising hard and I'm picking things like proteins to use that excess. Okay? There are, simple mathematical exercises to determine how many grams of protein we need, and we do that by calculating our body weight. If you're extremely overweight, if you're more than 30% body fat, I want you to use your goal weight as your marker. So if I weigh 350 pounds and it's mostly fat, but my goal weight is 200, that's what I'm basing my numbers on. A 200-pound person would need 200 grams of protein if I'm exercising hard. Okay? Not 350 grams. And then trying to duplicate that with carbs and then adding my fats. I'm going to be way over and above any type of maintenance to weight loss calculation totals. So I have to be in that deficit to lose weight. So if I use my goal weight as my calculation numbers, it's going to make things a whole lot easier. You'll immediately cut calories probably at such a rate to see that 2 pounds a week of fat loss. Now each pound of fat is 3,500 calories, and each pound of muscle is somewhere 600 or 700, depending on what you read. We'll say 600 calories in a pound of muscle. Okay? So I need to create a deficit of 3,500 calories over the course of the week to lose 1 pound of body fat. And obviously, if I'm trying to lose 2, that's 7,000. That's a lot of calories disappearing from my diet. But if I'm incredibly heavy now, it means I'm taking in a lot of calories. You cannot maintain a heavy weight on a few calories. You may think you are, but I promise you, once you do the math, once you do the calculations, once you are tracking what you are eating, you're going to be shocked at how many calories you're actually consuming. All right. So we've done all these calculations. We come up with our numbers. Okay. Well, wait a minute. I thought I read somewhere years ago that I could not digest or absorb more than 25 grams of protein at a sitting. Well, it turns out that that was a published study years ago, and it was rather flawed. They had their participants come in and do leg extensions, okay? And then they would measure how much protein they could absorb after the exercise. Well, it wasn't nearly enough exercise to stimulate the body, so there was no need for the body to have an uptake of protein. So we could say that that was rather flawed. A recent study that was published in Cell Reports Medicine magazine, or the paper, Cell Reports magazine, Medicine, sorry, Cell Reports Medicine, last December of 2023, they released a study showing that upwards of 100 grams, which is as high as they took the study, could be absorbed from your food. Okay? So let's say that early in the day I've missed some meals and I missed some protein, and later in the day I'm going to try to sit down to a bigger consumption of protein. I can do that as long as my total for the day is what it should be, is what I've calculated it to be. That can be absorbed. Now, certain proteins absorb at certain rates. So if it's eggs, it might take 3 hours to absorb that protein, whereas whey protein, might be quicker absorbing if there's sugars in there. Casein takes a lot longer, maybe 7 hours to absorb that, depending on how much you've had. So my point is that you're still providing an amino acid profile for the body that it will use because you're bringing it in before the day is over. And the damage that we do in the gym, which is what exercise is, we break down the muscle at the cell level. Your body gets signaled with an inflammatory response in a good way that this needs to be repaired, and it needs to be repaired now, and it needs to be repaired with more structure so that next time what we did is not quite so destructive to the muscle itself, and that's how we get bigger and stronger muscles, and we become a machine of muscle building. If we are deficient in protein, if I've limited myself to 25 grams per meal and I miss the first meal, I may not hit my goal by the end of the day because I was erroneously under the impression my body couldn't absorb any more than that. So this recent study did correct that error. Okay? So, 100 grams at any one sitting, that could be, a pound of steak, 2 chicken breasts. It's a lot of food, but don't worry, it's not going to automatically get stored as fat unless it becomes part of a caloric surplus. In other words, we've just eaten too much in general all day, and really the caloric surplus doesn't care if it came from protein, carbs, or fats. The mechanism to store fat will be in place. Okay? The way that we manipulate calories, we want to not compromise our protein intake. So let's say that I've reached a point where whatever my calorie number is for the day, 2,000, 1,800, 1,600, doesn't matter what it is, I stop losing weight. Well, I need to cut calories from somewhere in my diet, correct? Correct. However, I don't want it to come from protein. I want my protein to remain high. Now, as my body weight comes down, if I was super obese, we talk about using our goal weight. So it's going to be a long time before your actual weight is below that protein usage, that 1 gram per pound of body weight. So until you get to 200 and less, that number won't fluctuate. But as you get lighter and lighter and lighter, your protein calculation will change. Personally, I wouldn't change how much protein I'm intaking. I would leave it where it is. Excuse me, and make my change in the form of carbohydrates and fats. And the easiest way to cut calories out of your diet is by cutting fat. Fat is more than twice as energy dense per gram. So I can cut 2 times the amount of calories per gram by just cutting fat. Okay, so if I'm consuming a diet relatively high in fat, if it's 30% of my intake, then cutting it down to 20% of my intake is going to relieve myself of a whole bunch of calories that my body doesn't need anymore. Okay, it told me it doesn't need them anymore because I stopped losing weight and it became a maintenance number. So I need to get rid of those calories in order to keep losing weight. Okay. Carbs have gotten a bad rap, carbohydrates. As long as they are from a complex source, like a sweet potato, even a white potato, white rice, if we can stay as close to single ingredient foods, an apple is an apple. Apple pie is dozen ingredients, okay? But an apple is 1 ingredient. So if I can stick with single ingredient foods, I am going to find that those carbs are probably going to be just fine in my diet. They're going to provide fiber. They're going to give me the energy that I need. And more importantly, my muscles are going to appreciate it. Muscles burn glycogen or blood sugar for energy. Carbohydrates are most readily converted, fat too, but they're readily converted to glycogen. And for each gram of carbohydrate that you consume, it will latch onto 3 grams of water. Okay, so now I have a molecule that is 4 grams. Carb, water, water, water. Water within the muscle cells is a positive thing. That's how creatine monohydrate works. We'll talk about this next week in our macronutrients and supplement information. But it draws water into the cell. Carbs draw water into the cell. So with that glycogen is going to come a certain amount of water, hydrating our muscle cells. Now, a dehydrated muscle cell, like a raisin, is not, it doesn't have a great shape to it. It doesn't perform as well. But a grape that is well hydrated can, if the muscle cell looks like a grape, then it is one that can exert more leverage when faced with a force or a load. Dehydrated muscle cells do not have the same leverage that well hydrated muscle cells do. So now we have a stronger muscle, and our strength goes up in the gym and in life. Okay? We find things to be a lot easier to get around, to walk, to climb stairs, to pull ourselves up out of the pool, or whatever it is, that you're now a stronger individual because you have well hydrated muscle cells. As long as they're being stimulated to draw in the carbohydrates, the glycogen for energy, so that within the cell, this energy production is taking place for repair and recovery and restoration of these cells, you are going to be a stronger individual. Okay? Fats are a form of energy. In fact, they're more energy dense, as we've discussed. But if our body is, if you're exercising, if you're getting your steps in, if your daily energy expenditure is where it needs to be, your body will use those fats for energy. Perfectly fine. But because they're so energy dense, if we start to create a surplus of any kind, that fat, body fat and dietary fat are not exactly the same thing, but we can make one into body fat pretty easily, okay? Because it's already twice as energy dense, so it would be better to store that for later, okay, if your body is perceiving famine, all right? And I believe we've talked about how genetics play a role, that if your ancestors at prehistoric times were really, really good at storing calories so that during times of famine you didn't die, then those genes can get passed along. And although we are very unlikely to be in a time of famine today's day and age, your body is still very good at storing energy. So more than likely you're in a surplus, so your body stores fat very easily. And even if you're a little bit over your caloric needs for the day, your maintenance levels, if you're taking in too much fat, that's a quick way to build up those calories, and boom, they get stored as fat. So here's the deal. We want the body to use protein immediately, breaking down into amino acids for repair, recovery, and so on at the muscle. We want to utilize our carbohydrates, preferably complex carbs. Are a little bit slower to digest and slower to be dumped into the bloodstream as opposed to simple carbohydrates that are quicker. But still, we want that latched onto its water molecules, brought into the muscles for energy. Remember, amino acids are repair, glycogen is energy, and we want the hydration within the cell so that it can exert more leverage and be stronger. Everything else, everything that's left over, not everything, but for our discussion today, everything that's left over is stored as fat. So we want it to be used up. We want our body to even be in a deficit where it says, whoa, I need more over here. I need more glycogen over here. So your liver says, I need to mobilize some lipids, some fats from the body. and you go through a process where your body will convert that stored fat into glucose, sending it through the bloodstream where it can then be utilized. That's in an ideal situation. You are tapping into those stores. You're going to the bank. You're taking everything out of savings. Um, in this case, that's a good thing. Okay? Now, as you can see, I've oversimplified everything. All right? So don't spam the comments with, boy, well, you left this out or you left that out, or it doesn't happen quite that easily. In a nutshell, it kind of does. There are a whole bunch of mechanisms at play and a whole bunch of specifics that I've left out for the sake of simplicity. Okay? But in all honesty, although it is a complicated subject with many factors at play, it is as simple as taking in less calories than we burn to lose weight, taking in the same that we burn to maintain, and being in an excess will cause us to gain weight. If we're trying to build muscle, maybe a little bit of an excess is a plus. A big excess is not. But it depends what our goal is. But if we're trying to lose weight, you cannot lose weight without being in a deficit. I don't want the deficit to come from protein. I want to keep my protein right where it is. So I'm going to create a deficit out of the carbs and the fats, preferably the fats, because it's the easiest way to cut a bunch of calories at once. All right. So if you stay tuned here to this channel, you'll every Tuesday we're going to try to keep the nutrition on Tuesday and exercise and the fitness part of it that from that aspect on Thursdays, and everything from how to execute the exercises properly to tempo of the exercise and what does a positive versus a negative, all of that stuff. What do they mean? That will come on our Thursday program. All right. So down below, you're going to find a link to our cheat sheet, and it'll help you calculate what calories you need to lose that weight that you're looking for. If you need some help, if you go on Facebook, look up Ron's Personal Fitness on Facebook. We will be happy to help you. Just DM me. And I even do online training with my clients now because certain times of the day only happen once. So if you want the 8 o'clock slot, and I already have an 8 o'clock client, I'm sorry that slot is filled, but I could have 1,000 8 o'clock clients online because I'm sending you programs and we communicate later on how your workout went, and here's your diet program, and track that for me and let's see how we're doing. So there's ways of me helping you without you coming to see me at my studio in Bartow. Okay, so again, go on our Facebook page, all the information's there, and if I can help you in any way, don't hesitate to ask. Until next time, I'm Ron from Ron's Personal Fitness. Good luck with your diet now. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.